Hello and welcome back. Well, I've been flying drones since 2016, and one thing that I've learned is it's not really about your skills as a pilot. Now, anybody can fly a high-end drone with all the mod cons in a straight line and get cinematic footage. But if you're using something like the DJI Neo, your options are quite limited, and it boils down more to the camera settings that you use. Now, although the Neo is a great drone for doing things like selfies and using them on things like Instagram and social media and things like that, it does have a tendency to overexpose your footage and to make everything quite sharp. So you need really to come out of the automated modes and go more into the pro modes, which will greatly enhance your footage. Okay, well, as you can see, I'm back home earlier than expected. The reason is I had a flyaway incident with my Neo when I was making this video, and I'll include all the details of what happened at the end of it. So stay tuned. Now, towards the end of the video, I'll give you reasons why you shouldn't be using ND filters with the DJI Neo, because that can potentially ruin your footage. Now, the first thing you need to consider is the weather. So you really need to come out on a windless or very light wind day. Because the Neo is so light, it will have a tendency to be buffeted about by high winds, which can ruin your footage. Another thing to consider if you're filming yourself is your clothing. Now, recently I went out and I did a day's filming up in the local mountains here. Just using the Neo and my phone to see what sort of results I could get. I had a grey t-shirt on, and as a result, when I came from some trees out into the sunlight and I was doing a zoom out, then my whole top half was just overexposed. Now, it's okay for social media, but you couldn't use it anywhere else in any sort of professional manner. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the settings we got for the drone. So we need to press on the three dots in the corner, and then we're going to go over to camera. So the format is going to be MP4, the colour normal. We're going to change the coding format to 256. Now, if your computer can't handle this, that's okay. It's not going to make any difference. It's just more of a compression thing. Next, we're going to come down and we're going to have the histogram on. Now, the histogram is a graphical representation of the exposure across the whole of your image. So you want to try and get it so that the lines are peaking towards the middle. If they're too far over to the left, then your photo is underexposed and the shadows are going to be crushed. And if it's too far over to the right, it's going to be overexposed and the highlights are going to be blown out. Now, you can't do anything about the highlights, but you can, in some circumstances, with the shadows, bring them back. So it's always better to err towards the middle and the left than the middle and the right. Next, we're going to put on the overexposure warning. And what that'll do is, as you're filming, you'll see on your controller or on your phone that you'll get zebra lines, and those will indicate that those areas of the footage are overexposed. Next, we're going to go down to grid lines, and for this I like to switch all three of them on, and then you can see then that we've got the lines set up on the screen. So you can set up your rule of thirds, which means that your main subject matter should be on one of the lines, either horizontally or vertically. You've also got the center dot, so you can see if you are tracking something, you are keeping it center if that's what you want to do. And you've got the diagonal lines, which also help you with that. And that leads us on to white balance. Now, white balance tells the camera how warm or how cold the footage is going to look. If you leave it to manual, then you'll have a tendency that it could fluctuate and give you little alterations in the colouring of the footage as you fly. So we need to change that over to manual. So the best way to do that, go from auto onto manual, and you can see then it sets the colour temperature. Now, that's the colour temperature as it is now. Okay, so you want to leave it as that. If you want to set it manually, you can do that as well. And for that, I suggest using, if it's a bright sunny day, round about 5,600. For a cloudy day, it's going to be 6,300. And if you're doing sunrise or sunset, you want to have it round about 5,700. So that'll bring the warm tones into the footage for you. Now, the next two settings are the most important of all, okay? So you need to go into style, and there you've got your sharpness and your noise reduction. Now, the Neo with the built-in settings does tend to have the footage overly sharp. So we need to reduce the sharpness down to -2, and then also reduce the noise down to -1. Now, that's going to greatly improve the footage, and I'll show you examples of that in a moment. Also, if you do follow me regularly, then you know that I'm not sponsored. So if you could find it to do the thumbs up and the like, subscribe and all that. It would be greatly appreciated. Everybody says it, but it does really help out the channel. Thanks very much. The next thing we're going to look at is the gain and expo tuning of the drone, and this is how the drone reacts to the input from the controller, the speed that it goes, the way that it turns, and the gimbal speed and stopping distances, that type of thing. So first of all, we're going to look at the cine mode, and we're going to leave that as the factory default for the drone, and that'll be fine. So then from there we move on to normal, and from that we want to set the max horizontal speed, the ascent and the descent to maximum, the max angular velocity to 75 degrees per second, the brake sensitivity to 100, and then we change the expo, the up and down to 0.25, the yaw to 0.15, and the roller pitch to 0.2. Then we go on to the gimbal control, and we'll set the max control speed and tilt to 15 degrees a second, and the tilt smoothness to 10 degrees. Finally, we'll go on to sport. So for this, we're going to set the max horizontal speed, the ascent and the descent to the maximum we can, the max angular velocity to 120 degrees per second, the braking sensitivity to 100, the expo, we'll have the up and down to 0.3, the yaw to 0.15, and the roll and pitch to 0.25. And then finally, we'll do the gimbal control, where the tilt speed is going to be 20 degrees per second and the tilt smoothness is going to be 15 degrees. If you make a mistake with this, you can just scroll down to the bottom, and there's an option there where you can reset the settings that you've dialed in. Now, these settings are not hard and fast. They can change depending on your circumstances and what you're filming, so just be aware that you can go in and change them to suit you at that particular time. These are just the ones that I find useful for when I'm filming. Now, don't be afraid as well to change the settings during the flight. It could be that you're up high and you need sport settings to fly fast to get more of the scenery in, but then you come to something you actually want to film and you need to go into cine mode and do a slow flyby just to get the best image you can. A couple of other things to bear in mind when you are flying with the Neo is don't be afraid to use the automated modes when you are flying, things like zoom out or orbit, bird's eye drone, whatever it's called, because that can enhance your footage, and it also gives you a lot smoother of an effect. And also remember to film longer than you think you need, because bloody girls. Another thing to remember is to film longer than you need, because there's nothing worse than coming home, you've got a nice bit of footage, say you're going along the estuary, something like this, or whatever you're filming, and then you think you've got sort of 10-15 seconds, but the first sort of 5 seconds are ruined, the last 5 seconds are ruined, so you're better off filming for a longer time, just you got more footage to play with towards the end. Another thing you should try to use if possible is the cruise control function. Now this will allow you to press, I use the C1 button at the bottom of the controller, so as the drone is going in a predefined direction and speed and height, whatever, you can press this and then it'll carry on with that trajectory without any input from you. So that again will give you a nice smoother effect. Now, a couple of things I couldn't mention when I was out and about because of in some of the Flyaway, which is coming up, I promise, is one of the things you need to look at is when you go into Pro mode is to set the ISO as low as possible. Now, if you set it around about 100, that's ideal. You could go up to 200. Anything over 400 and you're going to get too much noise in your actual footage. Now, normally when you're using Pro mode, you need to use what they call the 180 rule. And that means that you would set your shutter speed to twice the frame rate. So if your frame rate was 30 frames per second, your shutter speed would be 1/60th. And normally you would use ND filters to do this. But as you'll see, I would advise using against ND filters. Instead, use your shutter speed and bring it up or down so the compensation value at the bottom is round about -0.3 or -0.7. Or you could do it so that the zebra lines disappear. Now, earlier on I mentioned about using ND filters. An ND filter is basically, it's the analogy everybody uses, is sunglasses for your drone. And it reduces the amount of light that hits the sensor. Now, on usual drones which have got a 2 or 3 axis gimbal, that's great because they've got a mechanical gimbal which can stabilize the footage. But the Neo is different. It's only got a single axle gimbal, and that means it uses electronic image stabilization to make sure that the image is stable. So as a result of that, it means that if you are using ND filters, there is a tendency that the footage can have artifacts in it which will distort the image as you're flying. Now, if you're going forward, it's not so bad, but if you are going left to right, then you can get these shimmering or glittering effects, which can ruin your footage. Now for me, I don't tend to use ND filters, especially don't use them in the automated modes, because once they're on, the camera is going to increase the frame rate anyway to compensate for the light coming in, so it makes no difference to your footage. You're not going to get any more motion blur using ND filters in automated modes. And I tend not to use them when I'm flying in manual mode as well, if there's going to be a lot of manoeuvre, say I'm doing an orbit around something, because it'll again just ruin the footage. It's not so bad if you're doing something like, say, a slow controlled zoom out. That may be okay, but other than that, anything which involves turning, that type of thing, is going to be ruined by the use of ND filters. Now, if you look closely at this footage, you can see that the image starts to shimmer as the drone approaches the top of the tower, and that's caused by the use of the ND filters. So really, for the DJI Neo, ND filters are a waste of time. Save your money. Okay, if you found it useful, do the like and subscribe and all that sort of stuff. It does really help the channel. Hopefully I can get up to 200 subscribers, and it'll also mean that my wife's off my back nagging me that I'm wasting my time doing this. So thanks again. This is just a quick update to let you know what happened to me today. I was out flying my Neo local to where I live, and the point of the video was to show the difference between the cinematic pro settings and the automated settings. So I took the drone up to approximately 18-19 meters towards a brick tower, and the idea was to lock onto that and just film it doing a point of view. I tried to lock on, and I had a message coming up saying identity subject failed, select static subject with a textured surface. The drone wouldn't lock onto it, and the next thing, it did a flyaway and it flew off to the left. Now, unfortunately, behind me, there's an old docks, which is now flooded, overgrown with trees, bushes, brambles, that sort of thing. It flew across these bushes, landed in a tree, which is impossible to get to. So I just wanted to share that with you, the fact that flyaways do happen, even when you've got the best weather conditions. You've got fully coverage with the satellites. Like I said, I had 27, I think it is, on the video. And there was no other reason other than, I'm guessing, for faulty software. The IMU was calibrated, the compass was calibrated, which I do before all my flights. So I can't see any reason other than software error. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you. If you do find it useful, give us the thumbs up and like. God knows I need the subscriptions now so I can eventually get monetized and buy a new drone. So until then, I'll catch you again soon. Thanks very much. Bye.